Memoirs of a Night Nurse. Chapter 1. The Night Beckons. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sprawling complex of General Hospital in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, RJ felt the familiar thrum of a city gearing up for the night. It was the early 2000s, a period when the nights crackled with a restless energy, an energy RJ, in his other life, frequently amplified. On his cherished weekends off, he wasn't just RJ, the diligent nurse. He transformed into RJ, the musician, his fingers dancing over guitar strings, his voice weaving soulful, Louisiana-infused melodies that filled packed, smoky bars and pulsating nightclubs. These were places where bodies swayed in unison, where laughter and liquor flowed freely, and where the pursuit of fleeting connections was an art form. By this point in his career, RJ had shed much of his initial small-town reticence. The first year of nursing had been a crucible, forging a more confident, outgoing man. Now, seasoned by both the intensity of his profession and the camaraderie of the stage, he moved with an easy charm, his friendly demeanor and quick wit making him a popular figure. But tonight, the pre-gig adrenaline was supplanted by a different kind of nervous excitement, a potent cocktail of anticipation and trepidation as he prepared to plunge into the depths of his first official night shift on a new unit. RJ, though now more outwardly social, still possessed a keen, observational eye, a trait honed by years of assessing patients and navigating complex social dynamics. He'd traded the predictable rhythms of his small-town upbringing for the relentless, often chaotic, pulse of urban hospital life. The move from the structured, sunlit world of day shifts to the enigmatic, often shadowy realm of the night shift was a deliberate leap into the unknown. He'd heard the hushed stories, the almost mythical legends of the night crew, a breed apart, they said, operating under a different set of rules. He was about to discover just how intricate and raw the tapestry of secrets, desires, and human frailties could be when woven in the dim, fluorescent glow of the hospital after dark. He introduced himself to his new colleagues, a motley crew whose faces were maps of long nights and shared confidences, etched with a unique blend of weariness and a dark, knowing humor. RJ, with his easy smile and entertainer's knack for connecting with people, found himself quickly accepted. It didn't take long for him to realize that the night shift wasn't just a different schedule, it was a different dimension. The hospital, a bastion of sterile order and professional decorum by day, shed its skin as darkness fell. It morphed into a liminal space, a self-contained ecosystem where the usual societal constraints seemed to loosen, and the more primal, unfiltered aspects of human nature surfaced with startling regularity. With fewer administrative eyes watching, and a skeleton crew navigating the labyrinthine corridors, the hospital often became an unwitting stage for simmering scandals, clandestine passions, illicit affairs, and heart-wrenching tragedies that played out in hushed tones and stolen moments. It wasn't long before RJ, now a more active participant in the night's social currents, rather than just a quiet observer, found himself entangled in the periphery of one such drama, a particularly torrid and widely whispered about love triangle. The players were the devastatingly charismatic doctor, Ethan Sullivan, a cardiologist whose skilled hands were as famous as his wandering eye, the recently enhanced nurse Jessica Alvarez, and the coolly beautiful, yet surprisingly vulnerable, charge nurse Olivia Anderson. Dr. Sullivan, a man whose expensive suit and gleaming wedding band did little to deter his conquests, possessed a magnetic charm that, it seemed, neither woman had the inclination or perhaps the willpower to resist. Nurse Jessica Alvarez, fresh from a surgical vacation that had gifted her a significantly more prominent bust line, seemed to have snagged Dr. Sullivan's undivided and very public attention. RJ, with his friendly rapport with many of the staff, couldn't avoid hearing the details. Jessica's breathless, giggling accounts to her friends of Dr. Sullivan's suggestive compliments, the way his gaze would openly caress her new figure during rounds, the lingering touches that were far from accidental. Her transformation had undeniably ignited a blatant, almost predatory spark in the doctor. He pursued her with an intensity that was both brazen and the subject of much salacious gossip. RJ once saw them in a quiet alcove near the cafeteria, Jessica pressed against the wall, Dr. Sullivan leaning in so close their faces were almost touching, his hand dangerously high on her thigh. The air around them crackled with a forbidden energy that was palpable even from a distance. Meanwhile, charge nurse Olivia Anderson, a woman whose striking beauty was usually sheathed in an armor of crisp professionalism, found herself ensnared in a far more clandestine, yet equally passionate affair with the very same Dr. Sullivan. Olivia, with her cascade of raven hair and eyes that could shift from piercingly intelligent to meltingly soft in an instant, was a respected figure of authority. Yet, beneath that composed facade, she was wrestling with the intoxicating allure of their forbidden encounters. RJ, who had a knack for being in the right place at the wrong time, or perhaps just an approachable demeanor that invited confidences, had on more than one occasion witnessed her slipping out of Dr. Sullivan's on-call room in the pre-dawn hours, her usually immaculate uniform subtly rumpled, a telltale flush staining her cheeks, and a look in her eyes that was a confusing mix of guilt and exhilaration. She was a woman clearly torn, her professional integrity and the vows she knew he'd broken, warring with the overwhelming, addictive passion they shared. He'd even heard rumors, later confirmed by a tearful Olivia during a particularly stressful night, of them being caught in a compromising position in the linen closet on the pediatric floor, a story that sent shivers of scandal through the nursing staff. RJ, no longer just a reluctant voyeur, but someone whose friendly ear sometimes caught the fallout, found himself oscillating between amusement at the sheer audacity of it all and genuine concern for the emotional wreckage he knew was inevitable. The sterile hospital walls, usually witness to battles against disease and mortality, now also bore silent, complicit testimony to a different kind of human drama. Stolen, hungry glances across crowded nurses' stations that sizzled with unspoken desire. Whispered, desperate confessions in dimly lit supply closets that reeked of antiseptic and secrets. And hastily arranged, risky rendezvous in deserted corridors that left a lingering trail of perfume and unspoken tension. It was a complex, messy, and dangerously thrilling affair, fueled by ego, desire, infatuation, and a reckless disregard for consequences, where the already blurred lines between personal and professional lives were not just stretched, but flagrantly violated. As the love triangle twisted and tightened, its tendrils of intrigue, jealousy, and possessiveness coiling around the involved parties, the atmosphere within the hospital walls grew thick with unspoken accusations, furtive speculations, and a palpable sexual tension. Whispers circulated like a virulent contagion, each retelling more embellished than the last. RJ, whose social nature meant he was often part of these conversations, became privy to even more details. The clandestine exchanges of room keys, the tearful, late-night phone calls Olivia sometimes made from the nurse's lounge, the barely concealed animosity that flared between Jessica and Olivia whenever their paths inevitably crossed, sometimes escalating to hissed insults and thinly veiled threats. Jessica, emboldened by Dr. Sullivan's attention, would flaunt their connection, while Olivia, more discreet but equally possessive, would retaliate with icy disdain and subtle power plays. The night shift had conjured its own self-contained, dimly lit opera, a stage for the raw, entangled, and often indecent emotions of the hospital's nocturnal inhabitants. RJ also began to notice other, smaller dramas playing out, and sometimes found himself an unwitting confidant or recipient of attention. There was Dr. Peterson, a married surgeon in his 50s, who always seemed to find a reason to linger a little too long by the station of a young blonde scrub nurse named Tiffany. His compliments were always a little too personal, his hand on her arm a little too familiar. Tiffany, for her part, seemed to bask in the attention, her laughter a little too loud, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of naivety and calculation. Then there were the recurring rumors about the chief of anesthesiology and a particular pharmacist, their late-night inventory checks in the pharmacy becoming a running joke among the staff. More personally, RJ started finding small anonymous gifts in his locker, a new guitar pick, a rare blues CD, a freshly baked cookie with a suggestive note. Several older, often divorced or widowed, nurses made it a point to seek him out, ostensibly for work-related reasons, but their conversations often veered into more personal territory, their eyes lingering, their compliments on his music, or his smile a little too effusive. RJ, ever friendly but also aware of the potential for complications, navigated these interactions with a practiced charm, grateful for the kindness, but careful not to encourage anything he wasn't prepared to reciprocate. Amidst this simmering cauldron of human desires and professional indiscretions, and the ever-present life-and-death hum of medical machinery, RJ sought and often found a grounding solace in the profound, unambiguous act of healing. He dedicated himself to his patients with a fierce, quiet intensity, pouring every ounce of his compassion and skill into each touch, each word, each carefully administered medication. The night became his canvas, upon which he painted stories not of scandal, but of hope, resilience, and the quiet dignity of the human spirit facing adversity. Whether it was holding the trembling hand of a frightened child awaiting emergency surgery, his own voice a low, calming murmur, or comforting an elderly patient as they navigated their final, peaceful moments, RJ discovered again and again the true, unvarnished essence of nursing. It was, as he often reflected during the quiet lulls, 90% heart and 10% skill, a delicate, crucial balance of empathy and expertise. Eventually, the Sullivan Triangle reached its inevitable, messy climax. Jessica, after a particularly public argument with Dr. Sullivan, who had apparently tried to cool things off, transferred to a different hospital, but not before making sure everyone knew the sordid details of their affair, embellished for maximum impact. Olivia, heartbroken and humiliated, threw herself into her work with a renewed, almost ferocious intensity, her cool professionalism now tinged with a brittle sadness. Dr. Sullivan, after a brief period of lying low, was soon rumored to have found a new object for his affections in the radiology department. The fallout was a stark reminder of the emotional carnage such entanglements could leave behind. Throughout the ensuing years, RJ's night shift experiences would continue to be a rich, complex tapestry woven with these threads of intense medical drama, profound human connection, and the undeniable, often messy realities of human desire. From the adrenaline-fueled chaos of codes and traumas to the tangled webs of illicit affairs playing out in hushed tones and stolen glances, each with its own cycle of flirtation, passion, jealousy, and often painful endings. Each night brought new revelations, new challenges, and new affirmations of the multifaceted human experience. The hospital, in its nocturnal guise, became a confidant, the silent keeper of stories that would forever remain untold, known in their entirety only to those who witnessed the night unfold within its walls. And so, as RJ, now a seasoned night walker, navigated his journey through the labyrinthine corridors and dimly lit rooms of General Hospital's night shift, he learned to embrace the inherent paradox of its existence. In the midst of scandal and romance, of life-altering tragedies and quiet, unheralded miracles, he discovered the profound beauty of human resilience, the undeniable power of healing, and the quiet, unwavering strength that resided within the darkest, most vulnerable, and sometimes most indecent corners of the night.